Hello, this is Gabriel Anguiano from the Budget Office, and this demonstration is on how to enter your capital project request when your department still does not know the capital project ID it wants to use. As a user, you should be able to go to Budget Formulation up at the top of Sherpa Budget, and you should now be able to see Capital Projects Form 4700. Go ahead and click on that, and it'll bring you to Fall Capital Projects page, where you can now click on Add New. And here we can click the stage of the request, which will be the organization request, the first stage. And the system will generate its own temporary project ID that you can use for this request. We'll now pick the department. I'm going to pick 1099. And you should know the name or description of the capital project request. That's what we'd like you to use here, just a kind of a name summary. Okay, then we click Save. This should look familiar to some. This is the header of this capital project form. Again, project ID 520961, a system generated project ID. You can enter more of a justification if needed. It's a keyed in field, and then here on the right we have fund, department, and sub-department priority. This is functionality that is built into the form that isn't quite operational yet. That's why this year departments still had to do their ranking and prioritizations of their capital projects within Endeavor. The hope is that by next year, around this time when we're preparing the fall budgets for 2022, that this functionality will be in place for departments to do their ranking and prioritizations within the Sherpa budget system, and eliminate the need for entry into Endeavor, and eliminate the ranking and prioritization that's done in Endeavor. The mayor and council and final approval checkboxes you see here, those boxes will be checked as this request moves through our budget process and its different approval stages. So now I want to skip here to the tab at the end, the attachments tab. Just like you've been familiar with any of the other forms you've done in Sherpa now, this is a section where you can upload any backup documentation and required reporting. We will now click on project details. This attributes tab here with all of these different fields that you can key in. These are available for the departments to use as applicable for their different capital projects they might have. And countywide, there's just such a diverse usage of capital projects and the need for different reporting elements. So here you see them all. It could be that your capital project has a need to capture this information. You know, whatever you don't capture here, you will not be able to report on. So, but again, don't feel that you have to complete all of these. It really just depends if they're applicable to your capital project. there's this grouping tabs, and that's exactly what it is. Essentially, each one of these fields has groupings that you need to select from. You can use the quick search always to save you time. And as you can see, once you make the selection, down here below it will actually give you a little summary of what the code means. Some of these you might not be applicable to your project. So you can select not assigned. PC business unit. For this we'll use SLC01. Council district, we have all of these options, again, depending on your capital project or maybe what's driving the need for the project. You might need to select one of these. In this case, I'm just going to select not assigned. And not assigned for this one as well. Project status. Because this is a request that you are actually going to submit, you would be selecting the REQ for request. But in Sherpa, you will have the ability to enter capital project records that might just be in the planning stage and moving along towards maybe a request, but you haven't quite finalized those details. You can in fact start entering capital project records in your planning stage into Sherpa, have them there and ready for when you might have the budget nailed down and what you actually need to request. In this case, again, we will be requesting this, so right now we're going to select REQ. At this point, let's see, this right here is very important, PS project ID. PS really is PeopleSoft. I know it's MyFin now. This kind of header just stayed. But what this is essentially at the time throughout our budget process, it could be the mayor stage, could be the council stage, but at some point the department finally has decided or knows the capital project ID it wants to use. At that point, you would need to notify myself so that I can go ahead and add that project ID to our chart of accounts in Sherpa. I would like to also know what attributes you need me to complete in groupings so that I can add that appropriately to your project. Once it is added, it will then be available for you to go into the project record and then select the actual department capital project ID you want to use. As you can see right now, we just have some test project IDs in here. So I'm just going to select test for now. Again, this is something that the department has to make the budget office aware of so that we can add it to the chart of accounts. Before you'll be able to see it there and select it. Then essentially there'll be a crosswalk process that the budget office will do quarterly or once a year. That has not been decided yet, but the crosswalk process will have the effect of replacing the temporary system generated project ID with the department capital project ID. So let's save that and then cancel out of there. I want to stress this at this point, you absolutely want to click on the save button. If not, the system will not retain this record and any entry you've done. Let's click save. Looks like it did take everything. So now we should be able to close. And this is just to show you kind of a quick search how you could find the project again. You could search for the project ID. In this case, you could also search for the department. And now you can see the system generated project ID here, the form that we have created. So now let's go back in there. And let's do probably the most important piece, the project budget. And now you don't need to close out of the project after you save it and then quick search and come back in. That's just the step I did to show that in fact we did create the form for your capital project request with a system generated project ID. Now we're going to go in and actually add budget detail. So let's click on the add new button and we will select our department, select our fund. Activity ID field here. Some departments and in our work groups it was expressed that they might possibly in future years have the need to budget at activity ID level for capital projects. So we have made that available here. However, this is still kind of a grouping and selectable field. So if your activity ID is not present, as you can see, there are quite a bit, 5,700 plus. If you cannot find it in here, then it probably does not exist in our chart of accounts, at which point you would need to contact me from the budget office so that I can go ahead and obtain that information from you and set up the activity ID. And it also gives me a time to kind of probe and ask some questions as to the need to budget at activity ID level. For now, we're going to pick not assigned. Request type, we have the 5 options, and this will be a new request, so I'm going to click on new. Account. Let's see what that brings up. I believe construction. Let's do this. Program, software, and hardware. Okay, this field here, transfer capital project ID. It is to enter the capital project ID in case you are doing a transfer to or from another capital project. This is where you would enter that ID. Justification field just allows you to enter a little bit more language on this specific line and give it more detail. Then we have these fields here, 2020 projected amount. This is a new request, so the 2020 projected amount is not applicable. But we do have 2021 projected amount, 2022, 23, 24, 25, and then greater than 2026. And the important piece is down here, the 2021 budget request. So in this case, we're going to request 100,000. Okay. And our projected amount from that 100,000 to spend, let's say we know it's something we're going to get started late on in the year of 2021, so we're only going to spend 25,000. But in 2022, we will spend out the rest. So now that looks pretty complete. We're going to go ahead and click on save. And you now have one row of budget detail tied to project ID 520961. And I'm sorry, I guess I should mention this. I excluded the P because they will all start with P. System generated project IDs will always start with P. So to look at that line and explain some of these column headers, these you're very familiar with: request type, department ID, fund account, all the fields we completed when we had the window to add the new record. And this would be new, actuals from all prior years. There's nothing here because this is a brand new project. This will be a calculated field when you start getting into your existing projects and filling out budget detail. You should see some calculated figure in this column. There's also the 2020 adjusted budget. Again, this is a brand new project we're requesting for 2021, so this is not applicable. And same goes for 2020 year-to-date actuals. These three fields here are calculated fields. 2020 projected amount is not applicable. It is not a calculated field though. If I were to click on this pencil here, you can see it's a field you could actually enter. But in this case, it is not applicable. What we did enter was our projected spending amount of $25,000 for 2021, and then the $75,000 to spend the total budget requested in 2021. In most cases, the budget request should equal the total of the projection for that year and all succeeding years. There may be some infrequent cases where large multiple year projects can't be fully budgeted in a given year without causing the fund balance to go negative or below required reserves. Cases where the project relies on multiple future years of revenues to fund the project. In this case, the ensuing year 2021 budget request can be less than the total projection for ensuing years 2021 through 2026 or greater. The projection should reflect the full expected cost of the project so policymakers can see the total project cost regardless of what the budget request is for that year. The projected amounts are required and very helpful for long-range planning, reporting, and effective resource allocation. So please complete the projection columns. Account level accuracy for projections is not needed. The important part is that the total projection for each year is accurate, and users are encouraged to put the projection on one account line for simplicity. Let me also go ahead and put this up. Allow just a couple seconds. You guys can always pause this and read through. But these are helpful guidelines for how to handle those projected year columns on your capital project request. Okay, so now that we've kind of explained those, let's go ahead and let's say we needed to add a new line. We have the export import function, which most of you have used and know how to use. But for capital projects, there's really not that many budgeted lines per project. So I'm going to show you, probably some of you already know this, but I'm going to show you how to copy an existing, well, let's see if it's going to let us. Oh, I got to select it first. That's what it's telling us. Okay, copy. Perfect. So now I copied the line we selected. As far as the details we had, let's go ahead and change this account just to separate the two lines a little. Okay. And on this one, we're just gonna do a request of 20,000. Okay. And this we're expecting to spend also in 2021. Let's click save. And now you've just added another budget line detail for this capital project request. Okay, and again, the budget dollars that are going to follow this request is what is showing in this column, 2021 budget request, total of 120,000. The rest of these columns are strictly informational for policymakers to be able to make better decisions. Now that you have these lines created, don't forget that you can change the projected amount fields and your requested fields. This total actuals plus projected is a calculated field, as you saw, and cannot be adjusted. Now that we've entered some budget detail for this capital project request, let's go ahead and close. I'm just going to click save again. We can close here. And now let's say you want to see how that looks on a report. You would go to links, BFM reporting. Fall budget, capital, and there's only one report out there right now. These are the filters where you can filter for a specific project ID, your department ID, fall stages. In this case, it is the request stage that I want to look at, and I'm just going to run it wide open. And here it is. Here is that capital project request we entered, where we do not have a capital project department ID anyways, or a department created capital project ID yet. So we had Sherpa generate a temporary project ID for us. The department we entered it in, the fund, and then the total request over here. This is how this is a report that's going to be used for the budget book. So this is what will be published. But on this tab here, you have the ability to see the projected years and the entry done there. And then you have an analysis export, which should just be the raw data that you guys can pivot any way you would like. And I ran it right open, and this in fact is the only project right now that has any request dollars on it. So that's why I'm just seeing this. When departments come in here, because of your security rights, it could be that you can just click on request stage and then click OK, and it will bring back all the projects that you have security rights to. But you can also drill down to the different department, fund, project ID levels. Okay, well that concludes our demonstration of how to do entry when the department does not have a capital project ID and needs the system to generate a project ID for them. Thank you, everyone.